He came home 1 week early, expecting silence. But instead, the billionaire froze in place. His maid stood in the kitchen with 2 babies. One strapped to her back, the other pressed against her chest. Their mother was dead. Their father was gone. Orphans, with nowhere else to go. His anger flared. He demanded she be fired immediately. But would that change anything? Would it erase what had already happened, or the cries that would now live inside his mansion forever? The mansion stood like a shrine to silence. Walls of glass stretched high into the sky. To outsiders, it looked like paradise, but the workers inside knew better. Paradise made noise. This house did not. They moved through its corridors like shadows, slippers barely whispering on the polished tiles. They had been trained to mute everything. No humming as they swept, no clatter of dishes in the kitchen, no laughter too loud in the corridors. Here, silence was law, and at the center of it all was James. Mr. James, the billionaire whose empire stretched across oil, real estate, and banks. A man whose handshake made governments bow. He had built everything from the ground up, and yet he walked through his glass palace like a prisoner, his face stiff, his eyes hollow. To his staff, he paid well, but his word was final. And there was one law he never bent: no children. Not near his gates, not in his compound, not even in passing. Drivers were warned not to pick their kids from school in his cars. Workers with families kept their little ones far away. No toys, no tiny slippers, no sound of laughter had entered his mansion for years. The staff wondered, but none asked why. They had heard whispers, an accident, a tragedy. But James himself never spoke of it. He only carried it in his chest, heavy as stone. Grace, his most trusted maid, never asked either. She had been in his service long enough to know where the lines were drawn. She moved with quiet precision, commanding the workers, keeping the house spotless, ensuring meals arrived on time. She was loyalty in human form, and everyone knew it. She never faltered. She never questioned, until the day her sister died. It was a hot afternoon when the call came. Grace sat on the edge of her narrow bed in the servants' quarters, her wrapper damp with sweat. Her grandmother's broken voice cracked through the phone, telling her the news. Her sister had collapsed without warning, leaving behind 2 babies. Twins barely 6 months old. Their father was already gone, buried months earlier. The old woman's voice shook as she begged, "Don't give them away. Don't let strangers scatter them. You are all they have now." Grace's hands trembled. Her chest tightened. She had no husband, no children, only her grandmother, whose health was slipping more each day. Her salary fed them both. It was enough for 2 mouths, not 4, but what choice did she have? Days passed. James was abroad on business, unreachable, while the house carried on. That night, she went to her grandmother's house. The babies lay in a basket, their small fists waving, their cries thin but sharp. Grace lifted one, pressed it to her chest. The smell of milk and powder clung to its skin. Tears blurred her eyes. She looked at the other, wide-eyed and restless, reaching for nothing. She couldn't leave them. She couldn't. So Grace made the choice that would shatter the silence. She wrapped one child against her back, tied tight with cloth, and cradled the other in her arms. Her grandmother watched with tired eyes, whispering blessings as Grace stepped into the night. Her heart pounded as she reached the mansion's gates. The guards glanced at her, but said nothing. They had long learned not to question the woman who kept the house together. Through the servants' entrance she slipped, the babies pressed close. Every step deeper into the mansion felt like stepping into forbidden ground. The walls seemed to lean in, listening. Grace whispered prayer under her breath. Grace rose before dawn, fed the babies, strapped them tight, and carried them with her as she worked. She washed plates with one baby on her back, swept corridors with the other asleep in a basket nearby. The staff noticed quickly. Their eyes widened, whispers spreading like wildfire. Some hissed that she was mad, but no one dared report her. Grace was the backbone of the mansion, and in their own way, they trusted her more than they feared James. Still, the mansion's silence was broken. One morning, while dusting James's study, she saw it. a frame on his desk. Its glass cracked diagonally across the picture. Inside, 3 smiling children stare back, their arms wrapped around each other. Their faces were young, bright, alive. Grace's hand shook over cloth. She lowered her gaze quickly, but her chest ached. That was the shadow in the house. That was why no child's laughter was allowed to cross the gate. She didn't know how soon the shadow would rise again, because James was on his way back. His plane touched down at Murtala Muhammad earlier than planned. His convoy rolled through the city into the compound. The workers straightened, panic rippling quietly. Grace's blood ran cold when she heard. She had prayed for more time. But before I continue, I want you to do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, give a like, and drop your country in the comments. I would love to know where you are watching from. Thank you. So let's get started. That night, the mansion received him like a king returning. He dropped his briefcase in the sitting room, loosened his tie, and sank into his chair. The workers bowed slightly, then disappeared, leaving him to his silence. He wanted quiet, as always, quiet and a drink. Grace was in the kitchen, one baby tied to her back, the other asleep in a basket. Her hands moved quickly over the pot. She stirred faster, praying the children would sleep until morning. But prayers cannot silence hunger. A whimper rose. She froze, spoon midair. Her eyes darted to the basket. The baby shifted, face scrunching. The whimper grew into a sharp cry. Grace dropped the spoon, rushed to lift the child, rocking, whispering, begging. The mansion filled with sound. In the sitting room, James stiffened. The glass halfway to his lips stopped. He set it down sharply. His ears strained. It couldn't be. Not here. Not in his house. But the cries grew louder, 2 voices now, small but piercing. His blood froze. His chest tightened. He rose, each step heavy, each cry pulling him deeper. The workers scattered before him, faces pale, their eyes wide but silent. They too had heard. He reached the kitchen door and pushed it open hard. Grace spun, one child tied to her back, another in her arms. She looked caught, but her eyes did not drop. Her arms shook, but her body stood firm, as though daring the world to tear them from her. James stopped, his face darkened, his breath harsh. "What is this?" His voice shook the walls. "In my house? Children?" Grace swallowed. Her voice trembled, but she spoke. "Sir, they are my sister's children." His jaw clenched. "You broke my law." His voice grew harder, each word like stone. "After all I've given you, this is how you repay me? You think I built my empire by letting rules bend?" Her lips quivered, but her gaze did not falter. "You built it on fear, sir. But these children are innocent. If you want to sack me, do it. If you want me arrested, I am ready. But I will not abandon them." The silence that followed was suffocating. James's chest rose and fell as if he were drowning. Her words pierced him deeper than any insult. His fist shook at his sides. Then he heard it, not the present, but the past. In the children's cries, he heard echoes, his own children's laughter, high and bright, their voices calling him. The night of the accident flashing across his eyes, headlights, screams, twisted metal. His throat closed, his vision blurred. A tear slipped, hot and uninvited. He turned his face away sharply, ashamed. But the baby's cries rose again, soft but relentless. Grace lowered her eyes, waiting. James trembled, a man who had faced storms, lawsuits, betrayals, but never this. 2 children who tore his walls down with nothing but sound. And in that moment, the mansion that had obeyed him for years no longer belonged to silence. It belonged to them. The night after James's return was restless. The mansion seemed smaller, tighter, as though the walls themselves sensed his fury. The workers tiptoed through their duties with bowed heads, avoiding the echo of his footsteps. No one dared speak of what had happened in the kitchen. No one even whispered. James did not sleep. He walked the corridors like a shadow hunting itself, his tall figure drifting past the long glass windows, his reflection fractured by the lightning outside. Every corner mocked him. Every door he passed carried memory. He stopped at the staircase where his children used to play. He moved on, He stopped in his study. The cracked photo frame sat on his desk, the three faces smiling at him through broken glass. He lowered himself into his chair heavily, his shoulders sagging. For years, he had buried his grief beneath rules, wealth, silence. But now the cries had unearthed it, clawing it back to life. He reached for the frame, his hand trembling. He stared at the photo until his vision blurred. Then he dropped it onto the desk, pressing his palms against his eyes as if trying to push the sound out his head. Grace, in her small quarters, barely closed her eyes that night. The babies stirred often, their cries rising and falling like waves. She hushed them quickly, afraid every sound carried through the walls. Sweat clung to her skin, her chest heavy with fear. She knew James would not let this pass. The confrontation had only begun. That evening, the house fell under the same silence James demanded. He sat in the grand sitting room, a glass of whiskey untouched on the table before him. The workers moved quickly, setting his meal, then disappeared like shadows. He did not eat. He sat there, staring at the walls, his face unreadable, his eyes restless. Then it came again, at first faint, then clearer. A cry, sharp, insistent. His glass rattled against the table as he pushed back his chair. His jaw tightened, his hands curled into fists. He rose, his footsteps echoing like thunder across the marble. Every step carried him deeper into the house, closer to the sound that shredded him from the inside. The cries grew louder, two voices now. The sound twisted to the corridor, like a ghost dragging chains. His chest heaved. Sweat gathered at his temples. He reached the kitchen door and slammed it open. Grace stood inside, a pot steaming on the stove, one baby tied to her back, the other restless in her arms. Her wrapper clung to her with sweat, her face pale with fatigue. She rocked the child, whispering, her voice trembling but steady. James's eyes blazed. His voice crashed through the room. "You dare again?" Grace flinched, then steadied. She turned slowly, her arms tightening around the baby. "They are hungry, sir. I was feeding them." His fist shook at his sides. "You think hunger excuses defiance? You think pity is reason enough to spit on my law?" Her lips trembled, but her eyes stayed on his. "I think hunger excuses nothing. But they did not ask to be born. They did not ask to be left alone. They cry because they're alive." Her words stung sharper than he expected. He stepped forward, towering over her. "You think I don't know what life demands? You think I don't know what loss feels like? Don't preach to me." His voice shook, his breath harsh. "I buried 3 children in one night." Grace's chest rose hard. Her lips parted, but she could not speak at first. At last she whispered, "I know, sir. I see it in you every day. But these ones, they are not that night." For a moment, the room was silent except for the baby's soft cry. His chest heaved. His voice cracked. "Enough! I will not hear them in my house." The babies wailed louder, their cries filling the kitchen, spilling into the hallways, crawling into every corner of the mansion. The staff outside bowed their heads, frozen in fear. James staggered back, his face pale, his eyes wet. He turned his face away, ashamed, but the tears came anyway, slipping down his cheeks. Grace did not move. Her arms tightened around the child, her back straight. Her lips trembled, but she whispered softly, almost like a prayer. "They are not here to harm you, sir, only to live." The words fell into the silence, heavy as stone. James gripped the doorframe, his knuckles white. His breath tore through his chest like a man drowning. He turned away sharply, his face hidden in shadow. James stayed inside the mansion the next morning. Normally, he would have escaped into the noise of the city, into meetings and contracts where he could bury himself in work. But something chained him here. He paced the halls like a restless lion. Later that night, the storm deepened. James stormed into the servants' quarters without warning. The door slammed against the wall. Grace looked up sharply, one baby feeding with pap, the other asleep beside her. Her body stiffened, but her eyes did not fall. "Pack your things," James said. His voice was flat, final. The words cut like a knife. The room shrank around her, the sound of rain hammering the roof filling the silence. Grace swallowed hard, tightening her grip on the child in her arms. Her eyes glistened, but her voice came quiet and firm. "If I leave, they will not survive." For a long moment, nothing moved. His fists trembled, veins thick against the skin. His face twisted in rage and pain. Her shoulders sagged with exhaustion, but her gaze refused to break. The air between them grew suffocating, pressing down like the storm outside. The workers hiding in nearby quarters held their breath, listening. James's chest rose hard, his jaw clamped tight. Then, without another word, he spun on his heel and stormed out, the door slamming behind him so hard the wooden frame shuddered. Grace sat frozen, clutching the babies, her heart racing. She bent her head, whispering a prayer with trembling lips. 2 days later, James left the house without his convoy, without a word. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds. His driver tried to ask, but one look silenced him. James directed him to the cemetery. The ground was wet, soft under his shoes. The air smelled of earth and rain. Slowly, he walked between the stones until he reached them, 3 small graves side by side. He stopped, his knees weakening beneath him. He dropped down, the soil damp against his trousers. For years he had buried tears behind stone walls, but here they broke free. His hands trembled as he traced the names carved into stone. His lips formed each one slowly, reverently, as though summoning them back. His chest convulsed, his sobs muffled against the roar of the rain. He bent forward until his forehead pressed against the cold slab, the water from the sky mingling with the water from his eyes. Behind him, unseen at first, Grace stood with the babies. She had followed quietly, her wrapper soaked through, the children bundled tightly against her. She did not call his name. She did not intrude. She only watched. Her own tears blurred her sight as she saw him, the man who ruled a kingdom of glass, bent low, broken at the feet of his children's graves. One of the babies whimpered softly. James's head rose, slow, heavy. He turned slightly and saw her, Grace standing in the rain, the babies clutched against her chest, her face pale, her eyes glistening. His gaze lingered. The rain ran down his face, mixing with his tears. His lips trembled as he whispered, almost to himself, "Why am I still alive? If not for them." The rain poured harder, drowning the silence. Grace lowered her eyes, clutching the children tighter. She whispered a prayer under her breath, though she could not tell if it was for him, for herself, or for the little ones who had tied them all together in this storm. James stayed there, kneeling in the mud, the past pressing him down. The cries of the present hung in the air, small but unrelenting, refusing to let him forget. The mansion no longer belonged to silence. One night the sky split open, rain hammering against the glass walls. James stood in the grand hall. He called for Grace. She entered the hall, the storm roaring behind her, one child asleep on her back, the other awake in her arms, blinking against the flashes of lightning. Her wrapper clung to her skin, her hair damp from the rain that had slipped through the cracks. She stood at the far end of the hall, small yet unshaken. James's voice carried the thunder, low but sharp. "I cannot live with them here." Grace's arms tightened around the child. Her face was pale, her eyes glistening, but her voice came steady. "And I cannot live without this job. They are all I have." The thunder roared louder, as though echoing them. James stepped forward, the storm lighting his face in harsh flashes. His eyes burned, his hands shook. "You ask me," he said, his voice rough, "to bleed every day in my own house, to wake the sound that cut me open, to live in a graveyard of noise." Grace swallowed hard. Her tears spilled freely, but her voice did not break. "And you asked me to kill them with my hands, to hand them to strangers, to bury them alive while they still breathe." Their words collided, sharp and raw, carried on the storm's voice. For a long moment, they only stared at each other, neither yielding. Two figures locked in war, neither moving, neither surrendering. The storm dragged deep into the night. James stood in the grand hall, rigid, his tall frame outlined against the storm. Across from him, Grace held her ground. The babies pressed against her body. One strapped her back, one restless in her arms. Neither spoke. The silence between them was heavier than the storm itself. Finally, James's voice cut through, hoarse and uneven. Grace, I cannot sack you. You are the spine of this house. Without you, it collapses. He turned his face away, as though ashamed to admit it. His fists trembled at his sides. But I cannot live with them here. Their cries tear me apart. Every sound drags me back to that night. His breath faltered. I cannot survive it. Grace's chest rose sharply. Her arms tightened around the child. Her face was wet with tears, but her voice came firm. And I cannot leave. If I walk away, who feed them? Who pays for medicine for my grandmother? Who keeps them alive? Her voice cracked, but she steadied it. If I hand them to strangers, I dig their graves myself. And I will not. The hall darkened as the storm pressed harder against the glass. The babies stirred, one letting out a soft whimper that echoed in the cavernous space. James's eyes shut tight. His breath tore through his chest like a man drowning. He opened his eyes again, blazing. Then what do you ask of me? His voice rose, trembling with grief. To live in torment? To bleed in my own home every day? To hear my ghosts in every cry? Grace's tears slid down her cheeks, but her gaze did not waver. I ask nothing but this: let them live. If I must break myself in two to keep them fed, I will. If I must carry them alone until my back snaps, I will. But do not ask me to abandon them. Her words landed in the silence, heavy as stones. James's jaw clenched until his teeth ached. His fists trembled. His veins swelled against his arms. He turned sharply away, his shoulders shaking. His voice came low, guttural. If I cannot see them, then you cannot stay. Grace's reply came soft, broken, but unyielding. If I leave, they will die. The words clashed in the hall, sharper than thunder. Then silence. James's eyes glistened, his face tight, unreadable. The photo frame on the table, the one with the cracked glass, tipped slowly with the tremor of the storm. It slipped off the edge and struck the marble floor. The glass splintered with a sharp crack, a fresh line tearing across the smiling faces of children frozen in time. James flinched, his breath caught in his throat. Grace's head snapped toward the sound. The workers, hidden in the dark, covered their mouths to stop their cries. No one moved. The storm roared. The babies whimpered. The glass lay shattered. James's fist shook at his sides. Grace clutched the children tighter. The mansion itself seemed to tremble under the weight of a choice neither could make. Something had to break, but no one moved. Grace cannot imagine abandoning the twins. But this is a tight decision. Should she risk everything? Her job, her salary, the bills her family depends on just to keep them alive? Or should she obey her grandmother's words and hand the babies to strangers, never knowing what will become of them? And what about Mr. James? Should he accept the children into his mansion, even if their cries remind him of the past he has tried so hard to bury? Or should he shut the door on them, forget everything and protect his silence? If you were Grace, or if you were Mr. James, what would you do? Is there a different step and approach to it you would like to share with us? Please drop your advice as a comment in the comment box below. Your comment is a value contribution to society on someone passing through a situation like that, creating society value now. By comment what to do, and remember subscribe to this channel for more powerful storytelling. Stay with this channel. We don't just tell stories. We tell the ones that teach you moral lesson. Check our channel for more value story, and stay safe for more powerful story coming your way. Bye.